think so, thank you. Beautiful. Okay, Liam, yeah. Well, it's 6 o'clock, so and we do have a commitment to live stream, so we may get going. Um, Hello and welcome to those that you are attending in person. Thank you for coming along, and welcome to those joining us online. I am Martin Gill. I'm the CEO here at the Borough of Queenscliff. We're here tonight to present you our draft budget for the upcoming 2024-25 financial year. However, before we start, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands, waters and skies where we are meeting tonight, the Wadawurrung people of the Kulin Nation. We acknowledge their continuing connection to culture and country and the ongoing contribution they make to the life and spirit of our community. We pay respect to their elders, past and present, and extend this respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. You may notice the absence of the Mayor and Deputy Mayor, who are both apologies this evening, but I would like to welcome Councillor Tolhurst and thank you for coming along. I'm joined tonight by a range of councillors who look very smart sitting up there. We have nameplates for everybody, but I'd like to welcome Jody, McKenna, Gihan, Sarah, Stuart, Tim and Abby, who will, I'm sure, make contributions through the evening. So tonight's presentation, after some introductory remarks from myself, we'll invite Jody, our Financial Services Coordinator, to present an overview of the draft budget. Then we'll invite our Communications Coordinator, McKenna, to talk you through the community feedback from our earlier consultation that we undertook this year, which was a little bit different from the normal process that we undertake. And then, importantly, we'll end the presentation by inviting you to ask questions if you have any questions. If you are on Zoom, you can use the facility on Zoom to write a question at any time in the chat. And if you're here in person, we'll obviously ask you when we get to that point. We'll try as best we can to get you out of here by about 7 p.m. Okay. So normally when I do my opening remarks, we start by talking about all the new initiatives and all the capital programs that we're going to do this year, but this year's a little bit of a different budget. But I thought I'd just give you a quick background to how we got to here and how we prepare a draft budget. So we start working with Council quite early in the process, and the initial work with Council is really to provide an update on our financial position, and we also do a fair bit of work around establishing our projected cash position for June this year, or June 2024. And probably one of the most important things we do is we establish a broad intent or a broad theme for the upcoming budget. So each year councillors set a high level aspiration for the budget, and in particular this year, after the officers advised council that we were projecting that the recurring expenses for 24-25 would outstrip the projected income by about $450,000, council set us the following goal: prepare a break-even budget and find savings in operational expenses. So following this initial direction, the next step this year was to seek input from the community prior to actually preparing the draft budget. This was the feedback from this survey, and McKenna will speak to this in more detail than I will, really helped shape our early thinking. And at this point, we then started to develop the draft budget, keeping in mind that council had given us some initial direction and that we had some initial feedback from the community. So during the presentation, We then incorporated all the other inputs we have to consider. And for those of you who are familiar with local government and budgets, I've listed there all the things that we take into account when we're preparing budgets. I won't go through the list, but I will just focus a little bit on this year. We had the added input of a council election. And the council election has a couple of influences on the budget, and I think it's worth mentioning these because it does really shape the budget. Firstly, the election itself and the induction process that follows require a budget allocation, and this year that's about $120,000 in operating expenses. And secondly, it's important to present a new council with a financial position and a budget that they can work with during the initial part of their term. So it puts some responsibility back on this council and the officers to make sure that we're presenting the business in pretty good financial shape. One of the other key inputs is the reconciliation between recurring expenses and our anticipated income. And at the moment, you're hearing lots of governments talk about this issue, and some of us would have witnessed it last night during the Victorian State Budget presentation. But with respect to councils, it's coming into sharper focus. In the coming year, there will be a number of inquiries into the financial sustainability of local government. And we as a group, as a sector across Australia, face similar challenges to the ones we face here at the borough. So expenses are outstripping income. There's a reduction in the value of government grants that we get. There's limited income sources for businesses like local government. And we all have ageing assets that in the end up competing with community service level expectations as we try and renew and even potentially upgrade those assets. The top two tiers of government, the ones that set the regulations and manage the grant allocations, are starting to recognise that productivity gains are not an infinite resource, that any future gains in productivity will start to result in a reduction of service levels and our ability to manage the condition of assets. The two inquiries referred to in this slide reflect this realisation. The terms of reference for these inquiries overlap, and they include investigations into the financial sustainability and funding of local government, the changing infrastructure and service delivery obligations of local government, cost shifting from high levels of government to local government, the ability of local governments to meet the core service delivery objectives, revenue structures, and whether there are alternative models to funding. So how does this context emerge in our draft budget? For those of you who have read it, you'll notice it's not a very ambitious budget. It doesn't have a whole lot of new initiatives. It certainly has no new capital projects. We worked hard as a group to squeeze out more efficiency in the business, and we are starting to see the positive impact of the ICT transformation, which we've been working on over the last two budget cycles. We're starting to see that work its way through the organisation. You can see there that we've been able to start to manage our recurring expenses, and this year they're actually only 55% of the rate cap increase, which is fantastic. We also recognise that we've got plenty of work which is already budgeted for, and in our work plans, and importantly, we are ensuring that we retain a good cash position, and that goes to that point earlier about making sure that we present something to the next council that they can work with. In closing, I'd like to say the draft we're presenting tonight is a very responsible budget, and I'm sure everybody says that when they present a budget. But we are living within our means. We're looking to the future and continuing to provide the services we currently provide by managing cost pressures on us. We will have a lot more work to do next year as other local government reforms come into place, and we will need to start investing in asset replacements in the short term. But in this budget, we have created a good foundation to maintain our long-term financial sustainability and to hand over a budget in reasonable health to the next council. So with those opening remarks, I'm going to hand over to Jody to talk us through the budget itself. Thanks, Jody.
Thank you, Martin, and good evening to those that have joined us tonight. I'd like to take the next 15 minutes to take you through the draft budget for the 24-25 financial year. So first, I'd like to highlight that the budget is prepared on several assumptions about the economic conditions. These are noted within the draft budget paper, but most notably is the average consumer price index, or CPI rate, of 3.2%. And first up, let's just have a quick look at the top line items of the draft budget, which some Martin has already touched on. So we have a break-even underlying result has been achieved on a reoccurring basis. Our operating income budget is $13.05 million, and our budget includes a rate increase of 2.75%. This is in line with the state's rate cap. We have removed the tourist accommodation differential rate. This is in line with the introduction of the state government's short-term stay levy, which is expected to be introduced in January 2025. And overall, there's an $82 increase in waste management charges for a residential property. Our operating expenditure budget is at $13.08 million. There are $142,000 of carry forward ongoing operating initiatives, but there are no new operating initiatives that are included within the budget. There are also no new capital project works included in the draft budget outside $900,000, which is allocated from the annual asset renewal program. There are also no borrowings, and the council will continue to remain debt-free. And the draft budget does not draw on any funds from our general reserve. We are proposing to transfer $76,500 to our general reserve. This will bring our overall reserve balance to $8.3 million. So if we want to look at our income streams, our largest income source comes from rates and waste charges, accounting for 69%. General rates have increased at an annualised basis at 2.75, in line with the rate cap set by the Minister, as I said before. Rates per individual property are based on their property value. So based on the draft budget, there is a 0.5% increase in the average property value of the borough. This means if your property has increased by 0.5, your rates that you'll be paying will be an increase of 2.75. Although if your property has increased more than the average 0.5, your rates will then be in proportionate increase over 2.75. But on the other side, if your property value has increased at a lower rate than 0.5, you'll be paying less than the 2.75% increase. Right. And we'll look at the waste charge component next. So going back to our income stream, 16% comes from user fee income. So this is predominantly our tourist park income and our home care fees. 10% of income comes from operating grants. And I will note we do have no one-off operating grants included in our draft budget. And the remaining 5% is interest income on our investments and lease income. Now we get to waste management. So we have two main waste service types. We have our standard curbside waste and our public waste. And we charge waste services at a fixed charge. And council will continue to pursue a full cost recovery method on all waste management expenses. So if we look at our curbside waste portion first, overall we're seeing a $137,000 increase in our curbside waste operational costs. Approximately $34,000 is a result of an increase in hard waste and e-waste costs. Around $37,000 increase is in landfill and recycling collection costs. And a further $54,000 is attributed to an increase in our curbside FOGO processing costs. Council is also budgeting to recover $33,000 forecasted shortfall from this current financial year. And based on our full cost recovery method, total standard curbside waste charge income is increasing by $143,000. So per property, curbside waste charges are budgeted at $365 per property next year. And this is a $50 increase on the current year. Now into the public waste side. So we're seeing a $33,000 decrease in spend on our public waste operational expenses. Approximately $91,000 of this is coming from public waste pickup and disposal costs, although this saving has been offset by an estimated increase of $58,000 in the fixed price contract of our street cleaning and sweeping. Council is also budgeting to recover $61,000, which is a forecasted shortfall in the current year operating costs. Therefore, based on our full cost recovery method, total public waste charge income is increasing by $112,000. Per property, this means public waste charges are budgeted at $143 per applicable property, and that's a $32 increase on the current year. As we've detailed in our budget paper, any changes to the waste management to comply with the Minister's Good Guide Practice guidelines regarding service rates and charges will be incorporated into our future budgets. Now let's look at how the borough compares against our neighbouring councils. So for ease of comparison, we'll use $1 million property, and the total encompasses both waste and rates and waste charges payable, and they're calculated from each council's draft budget paper. So what this graph here is showing is that if you were able to afford $1 million property in each of these councils, residential property in each of these councils, you would end up paying the lowest rates and charges in the borough compared to the other councils. So now we can move, that's our income, so now we can move to our expense side. So from the pie graph, we can see the breakdown of our spend areas. So 41% is employee costs, another 43% is material and services, 10% is depreciation, and the balance of the 6% falls into other expenses. When we look at our overall operating expenses, there is a 6.9 or a $967,000 decrease, although this includes a reduction in one-off operating initiatives. The current year forecast includes $1.3 million of one-off operating initiatives, the largest being the grant-funded Wharf Street asbestos removal works of $800,000. When we exclude non-recurring expense items, depreciation and waste management expenses, there's actually a $155,000 or 1.5% increase in our reoccurring cash operating expenses. So this 155 increase is despite anticipated significant rising costs relating to the outdoor service contract and our municipal building surveyor services, which together are anticipated to increase over $380,000 from what was budgeted in our current financial year. The $155,000 also includes around $105,000 costs associated with the October 24 council elections. So, to manage this overall 1.5% increase, these cost increases have been mitigated by projected cost-saving measures in other areas of council, particularly through staff resource restructuring. So with that, let's have a look at our employee costs. Overall in the budget, we see a $63,000 increase or 1.2% increase in total employee costs from the current year forecast. This is despite a 2.25% increase in EBA for our EBA wage increase, a 0.5 superannuation guarantee increase, and increases in our work cover costs. These increases have been minimised due to significant savings anticipated through restructuring on the natural attrition through the current financial year. Through the restructuring and natural attrition, staff numbers are expected to decrease by 1.9 FTE from the 23-24 budget, and overall our employee costs for 24-25 are projected to remain at a similar level as those of what we budgeted in 23-24 also. Now, you may wonder why and how council spends its operating cash budget. This is the expenses less depreciation. The spend is split based on 3 service categories provided by council. So 66% of the expense budget is spent on delivering government obligations. These are services that government are obligated to deliver, such as road maintenance, waste management and street lighting. 21% of the budget is spent delivering government agreements. These include services that council deliver under formal agreement with other areas of government, such as aged services or coastal protection. And the remaining 13% is spent on council discretion. These are services that the council decide to deliver in response to an identified community need. For example, environmental sustainability services or tourism and business services support. Now we can look at our capital expenditure, and as Martin said before, in 24-25, Council is proposing no new capital projects, apart from those included in our annual asset renewal program of $900,000. The decision is not a reflection of our overall cash position, which remains positive, but it does reflect consideration of the projects which will be carried forward from the current financial year and the reduction in resource capacity required to ensure Council maintains a break-even operating position. Council considers it good practice to invest in asset renewal and upgrade projects, at least to the amount of our annual depreciation, which within the draft budget is $1.35 million. Therefore, we're proposing to transfer the difference between depreciation and what we're spending on asset renewal program to the asset replacement reserve to be spent on future identified renewal and upgrade projects. So, when looking at our cash and investments, Council continues to maintain a healthy cash position. Cash and investments are expected to increase by $96,000 during the year to $9.65 million. And I will note, of that $9.65, $3.45 million represents the balance of proceeds from the Murray Road land sale. These funds are set aside in a reserve account that will until the potential projects are identified within future years. Now, let's check what the draft budget and the draft financial plan indicate in terms of our financial sustainability of Council. The main indicator we want to look at is our underlying result. There are two ways that we report on an underlying result. First, we have our LGPRF method, which looks at income less capital grants versus our total operating expenses, which does include any one-off spend. So for the 24-25 budget, the LGPRF underlying result is showing a $33,000 deficit. The second way we report the underlying result is from our council plan measures and is based on a recurring basis. This is our recurring income that we expect to have year on year versus our recurring expenses, which we expect to incur year on year. And it does not include any one-off project grant or spend. On a reoccurring basis, after removing the one-off initiatives and the timing of waste management, we are budgeting to achieve a break-even underlying result for next financial year. Although financial sustainability is more meaningful when these indicators are judged over the medium to longer term period and not just in the 1 year in isolation. So let's have a look at the reoccurring underlying result for the next 10 years. So, per our updated financial plan, our underlying result on a reoccurring basis shows an average of $143,000 surplus each year over the next 10 years. But throughout the 10-year plan, the ongoing surplus is a result of continued leverage of the additional cost-saving measures and staff resource restructure from the current draft budget, with no new roles added in the 10-year plan. Although our plan is showing ongoing surplus, we still need to keep in mind our ongoing financial sustainability when making decisions, especially decisions that will result in additional ongoing expenditure, as we do not have the capacity to absorb additional expenses unless those expenses are backed by additional ongoing income streams. So, with that note, I'll stop there and I'll hand it to our communications coordinator, McKenna.
Thanks, Jodie. That was fantastic. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Good to see you all here this evening. Okay, I'm going to go through with you a little bit about how we engaged in our community engagement to get a bit of a sense of what meant a lot to our community and to learn a little bit more about how the things that were important to you are going to influence how our budget has finished up, how we've got to our draft budget. And after that, we'll have a chance for questions, so that's not too far off. So you may recall, across 4 weeks in January and February, a total of 330 respondents took part in an online survey that explored the priorities the public wanted to see in our draft budget. The consultation revealed important insights about our community's priorities for the upcoming financial year. This graphic just talks a little bit about how we engage with the community. We're really working very hard to use as many different channels for communication and trying to meet people where they're at with what their preferred mode of communication is. So everything from people dropping in to sending us in emails and submissions and replying on the survey. There was lots of ways that we were able to hear from you, what meant a lot for our 2024-25 budget. We'll speak a little about the survey. The survey findings provided us with information that enabled us to gain a better understanding of what the community's priorities are. So essentially what matters most to you. We use this feedback to inform and influence our strategy. Your voice aids us in creating an improved borough for all, importantly now and into the future. As part of the survey, community respondents were asked to nominate which areas should be Council's highest priority for the 2024-25 budget. The graphic on the screen demonstrates the feedback that we received. You can see there up the top that assets, facilities and public spaces, along with environment and waste, were right up the top. In a nutshell, respondents on average wanted Council to spend more on assets, facilities and public spaces, and as I just mentioned, environment and waste. Notable project suggestions included installing more footpaths, upgrading public toilets, planting more trees and protecting our coastline. And what is good to know is that we are investing in these initiatives across the borough in the 2024 period. This here is a snapshot of how rates dollars are spent. You can see here that assets, facilities and public spaces, that's 30%. Next, we've got planning at 14%. I'm going to make my way clockwise around this graphic here. Local laws is 7%, environment and waste 7%, arts and libraries is 12%, tourism and business support 7%, aged and family services was 7%, and investment in asset renewal was 17%, and that includes funds allocated for future spend also. There's a lot to be said for having such a highly engaged community, and we're really fortunate that people don't hold back in telling us and what they think about things and how else we might be able to shape the work that we do. The budget feedback Council receives on the budget through our proactive community engagement enables both councillors and indeed officers to stay abreast of what the community care about most. Your opinions are highly valuable and play a key role in the budget development process. Some years we are able to action more of the submissions and requests than others. However, what remains constant is that we are committed to hearing from our community so that we can work towards a budget that is not only financially responsible, but one that reflects the priorities of our community and our ratepayers. Overall, this budget is a balanced one, focused on strong service delivery and finalising projects. We hope that throughout tonight's presentation you have a sense of the strategy behind the 2024-2025 draft budget, and it's provided you with the detail necessary to appreciate how the budget has been devised. I'd like to remind you that our draft budget is available on our website and submissions are open until May 26, so you've still got a little time to write in with any submissions or to use that opportunity to get back to us with any questions that you might have. Excellent. So I'm ready to move on to the question and answer period now. We're really just going to have quite an open forum. I've got plenty of colleagues here to answer the questions, so I think we'll be able to cover most things. Our AV has assured me that you'll be able to ask from where you're sitting and we can pick that up with the sound. So I'll start off. Anybody got any questions? Great, excellent. Thank you. Down the front, go for it.
My name's Kerry Ella.
Hi, Kerry.
I'm here to represent the Maritime Museum.
Beautiful.
On the committee. I've only been on the committee since November, but I've got a long history with Leinster and no, 90% of the people's from here anyway. So, I've got a couple of questions. One is a more general question, and one is particularly related to the museum as an asset of the borough. So my more general question relates to ad hoc project development, and is there an opportunity for, within the budget, and I don't know where it might sit, for the borough to either contribute to projects that we might apply for, or that the borough can use as leverage for state government grants? I didn't quite know where that would fit within the budget, and what's the mechanism for releasing that money? Is it discretion of the CEO up to a level, or does it go back to council for approval? That's my first week.
That's a great question, Kerry. Parts to that, fantastic. Who would like to start with that one? Martin's going to. I might just ask if we can pass the microphone down to Martin, please.
Thank you, Kerry. Yep, it's on. So as a first principle, when we're doing project planning, we're looking at our council plan. So if we went back right to the start, my first recommendation to QMM would be, in the upcoming review of the council plan, is to start to plant some seeds about the projects, and so then they become part of the council business for the term. The second part is we don't have a specific allocation, but we have reserves, and at any point during the budget process or a budget year, council can review its budget and can make decisions to potentially support a project if it emerges. So we have, I guess, mechanisms to be responsive if required. There is an opportunity at the moment through this budget submission to potentially present to council some budgets, some ideas or projects that we can forecast potentially the QMM exploring in the following year. And we'd certainly have a role to play in any case in auspicing, supporting, providing in-kind support, and then the final step would be potentially some financial support. And you're quite right, depending on the amount of the ask, it either sits under the CEO delegation or would come to council for a full change of budget.
Good to know what the level is, and we talk to you at the appropriate time.
Yes.
But our current project, which we've applied for, and we've got a fabulous letter of support from the previous mayor, is for the upgrade of the boat shed, and that's in the state government grant at the moment. And yeah, certainly make a submission, a formal one. I think there's been some conversations, but not perhaps a formal submission requesting some funding towards that project if it be successful in receiving state funding. So it would be good to know if there's a particular level, because it will, depending on the amount of time you have to put in a grant, and how we can get it on the council agenda.
So I would suggest that a project of that scale, it would be a council decision, because we're making simply charge to an asset. So I think if you're in the process, we're good to engage.
Sooner rather than later.
We'll do that. And also, we'd obviously like, on behalf of the committee, thank the borough for receiving the grant for the asbestos removal. It's progressing. Slowly, it's progressing. But we understand the complicated nature of that building, which was perhaps not built the best way it could have been built in the day when it was built, but it's a very utilitarian building. But certainly the museum has aspirations for a larger project that could increase that as exhibition space. So that will be a project we come to you probably in future years around how we might be able to use that building in a different space. So we're ideally hoping that the roof will be finished soon, so that we can use it for the key purpose which it has been used previously, but as storage, but we won't be doing that going forward, hopefully. My other question relates to the Maritime Museum as an asset of the borough and where it might sit in your asset renewal program. And I note you have funding set aside of $900,000 in that space, but I'm speaking to committee members who have been there a lot longer than myself. They can't actually remember when a review of the maintenance schedule or any upgrade has happened to the actual building itself. And there are some issues relating to external to the building, but also there is no heating, cooling, temperature control in that building, and there's some other minor activities. I suppose the museum is that we think need to be dealt with, like carpeting and so forth, but we're unaware of where we might sit in your asset cycle and how we might start that conversation, and if it could be included in the current budget going forward. Would that require an increase to your 900,000, considering that you've got over 2 million in your asset reserves?
I would
Hand to Stuart Carey to give you a bit.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you for the question. I'll probably answer it in a more general way to provide some context first. The process for managing our building assets is we make a 4-yearly assessment, condition assessment. So, and we undertake renewal demand modelling on a network level based on those condition assessments. The works program is based on determining the buildings with the highest need and investing the renewal funding to the level of the average renewal demand averaged over a period. I can't give you specifics. I haven't got the details in front of me where the Maritime Museum sits within those programs. I'm happy to talk offline and have a further conversation. There were some works undertaken to remediate some window issues and some painting in probably the last 5 years, and it's entirely expected that in that position, in that extreme environment, that those routines would probably be slightly quicker than some other buildings. So happy to have a chat offline and give you some more information around that.
Because, as we all know, the better maintained building, the less it's going to cost in the end. And you know, it's the building's got a lot of life left in it, but it does need that regular maintenance, as you say, in the location it's in. But also, as an asset of the borough, it also performs a function to attract people to the borough, and the committee has some ideas around some fabulous exhibitions that we bring people in, and we really want to showcase that we're in a building that is well looked after and well presented as a site within the borough.
Absolutely. I'll touch base with you after the meeting and we'll get your contact details. Thanks.
Thanks, Stuart. Thanks, Kerry. That's a great question. I might just go to an online question that we've got now, and I'm sure someone from our finance team is happy to answer this one. Will there be an opportunity to present a submission to council? There has been an opportunity for this in previous years. Thanks, Gihan.
Thanks, Michael. Yes, definitely there would be. As a part of the process, that would be the next step, where when they make a submission during this submission period, then there would be an opportunity for them to come and present it to the council in one of the assemblies.
So it's key to get a submission in before May 26. Yeah. Great, thank you. Okay, back to the gallery. Any other questions? Excellent, thanks. Go ahead.
Could I get a copy tomorrow of Martin's slides and Jodie's slides at admin?
Absolutely. Yep.
Could you also, not now, but include in that, in the 900,000 asset renewal, what projects are you going to spend the 900,000 on next year? Not now, but could you give it to me tomorrow in the package or at some future date?
Thank you for your question. I think Stu would be able to explain it properly because it's a annual asset renewal allocation. So those are very much reactive renewal work. So I don't think there would be specific asset renewal work that we have identified. It's an annual allocation. Anything that we don't spend during the year, that will get transferred into asset renewal reserve to pick up any work in the future. But I think Stu would be able to provide it.
Before you give that to Stuart, that's the point. That I would expect you to know now exactly what you're spending that 900 on.
Yes, so as we've spoken about earlier, we don't have any, large-scale renewal projects, new large-scale renewal projects listed. We have the renewal fund there. We'll be targeting, classes or subclass of assets. So we'll have programs around renewal of roofing or spouting around a number of buildings, or we'll be looking at painting programs around a number of buildings. So the programs are not drilled down to specific buildings and complete renewal works or significant renewal works on any particular one building. It's a series of work packages focused on different elements.
That's a very interesting point. You make the distinction between painting and maintenance as distinct from renewal and replacement. Could you explain the distinction between maintenance and renewal?
Yes, so renewal is bringing the life of a building element back up or extending the useful life again of a building element. Maintenance is maintaining it at a useful life. So at times there'll be a distinction. For instance, if we replace a toilet door because it's been kicked in by vandalism, it's maintenance. If we have a proactive program to renew the doors within the toilet, it's renewal. Does that provide some?
So what's the allocation for maintenance and what's the allocation for renewal?
I'll have to take...
Asset replacement program. But maintenance, how much do we allocate for maintenance?
I'll have to take that on notice. I don't have that figure in front of me, but we have allocations in the budget for maintenance as an operational expense.
Thank you. Okay, we've got two hands up. I think you were first. Go ahead.
Just a question, Martin. You talked about a couple of formal reviews, federal and state, in the open comments. Is there anything, and I thought I might have said, you might have said there might be something coming down the track that you might have to prepare for. So I'm just wondering, is there something we don't know that we need a contingency for it all? It's going to come out of left field. In this financial year, maybe there's a review 24-25 and something particularly in the future budgets. I'm just wondering what you suspect, anything coming out of these. It will be material in terms of cost.
So we do know next year we need to accommodate the ministerial guidelines around waste charges, so that we know during this upcoming financial year we'll need to recalculate how we transfer the service charges across into other parts of our business, and that's going to have a significant impact on our... There's always a few surprises, like the state budget last night, the increase in the waste levy, for instance, will have some costs to us, which we've got to make a decision about whether we pass on to the community. So there's a few unknowns, but there's nothing of significance on the horizon except that we know there's going to be a rolling series of local government reform that will have some immaterial impact in terms of costs on the way we do business, but will have a bit of an impact. Yep. Does that address? Yep.
I mentioned state budgets.
Thank you, Martin. Okay, David.
Yep. I was just a little bit confused with that pie graph of $100 spent, that we had waste and environment of 7% equal to bylaws and local laws. So I was just a little bit confused on that, but that might need to be explained, because I thought waste was a fairly significant expense, and also the environment, looking after the environment, was fairly significant. So I just thought that basis. And in that context, the building maintenance, I did notice in page 55 of the budget that went from 172,000 to $1 million, an 83% increase, and consultancies went from nearly 600,000 to nearly 900,000, which was 34%. Now, I would like to know what we spent the money on in terms of building maintenance and consultancies over the year.
I think Gihan's at the ready for the answer.
Thank you for your question. First of all, about the pie chart, if you look at the waste management, because we get the waste management charges, so what we have captured here, the net contribution from rates for the waste management and environmental sustainability. So that's why you don't see a significant percentage, because we recoup waste management costs through waste management charges. So what we have tried to depict in that pie chart, if we collect $100 of rates, how do we spend that? So that's why we had to, when you look at our spend on the waste and environment sustainability, we have to consider it as net of waste management charges that we collect separately.
You added the waste charges onto that pie chart.
So we have taken the waste we have first allocated expenses against the waste charges. We have only considered the net remaining expenses, because that's the right way to look at how much we contribute from our rates towards that work. About the second question in relation to the building maintenance, I think again to answer that the previous question, so what we have budgeted for the next financial year, building maintenance cost of 172,000, that is for the next financial year. Current financial year, that is significantly overstated. It's because of the work that we do with the asbestos removal work. It's a 100% grant funded project. So we have that around 820,000 under that line item. So that's why current year cost is really overstated because of that one-off project. If you look at the next year budget, it's 172,000 what we have allocated for that cost.
Consultancy fees, where did that money go?
The consultant is for a various work, like even one example, now we have building surveyors. So it's a consultant, so there are various services that we acquire to provide our service back to the community. So it's a combination of those various consultants that we engage.
That's going down next year.
The consultants, if you look at here, it's 896,000, page number 55. The next year budget is 593,000, 303,000 reduction compared to the current year forecast.
Years ago, the councils came out and said no more consultants. To have a figure of nearly $1 million in consultants is quite extraordinary in terms of amount, which is fairly significant expense.
I'll take your comment, but I think in the past we have provided a full breakdown of the consultants and contractors that we engage to provide various services to the community, and even we can do that this time as well, but we won't be able to do it now because we are in the process of finalizing our largest contract. So there's a commercial confidentiality of that. So once we have got that finalized, even this time we would be able to provide a full breakdown of our consultants and the contractors that we engage, because we have done it in the last, when we were presenting the last year budget.
There's some work that just has to be done, and sometimes, for instance, with the coastal management plan, you either put on a staff member or you get a consultancy to support you to do that. It costs either way.
Getting expert advice for that. But in essence, councils need to be aware also of the briefs and what contractors and the consultants are going to be costing us.
Yeah, and they certainly are. And I think the key point in the budget is it's a $303,000 reduction this year. So we've certainly been careful.
That's because you've got no projects. Is that right? It's very different.
Thank Thank you, Martin. Any more? Yep.
Yeah, just, oh, sorry, not me?
Yes, you.
Oh, good. Rates and charges we talked a lot about. They've gone from 8.1 million, actual 23, forecast 8.5 million for this year, to 9 million in the budget. So they've gone, rates and charges have gone up $500,000 each year for 2 years. So we've gone from 8 million to 9 million in rates and charges over the period. I take the point about the cap, but in the budget paper, and I can't find it because I was about to look it up on the website, but the waste charge, although the general rate charge has only gone up 2.7%, the rates of the waste charge has gone up 20%. Now, when do we expect to achieve some efficiencies in the collection of waste? I would have thought with the bins, trying to reduce landfill, recycling, vegetative waste being composted, but in actual fact, I don't think we're putting any more trucks and drivers on. I mean, I think the state is increasing the EPA levy. I really think it's important because they're quite, I mean, that's a big change in 2 years, from 8 to 9 million. Can you give us, whether you do it now or give it to me in a letter or I'll send an email in tomorrow, but I think if we could get a better breakdown of what's contributing to that very large increase in waste charges.
Given the context tonight, it's better if we do take it on notice and provide a response, but and we're happy to do that because there's, as you know, as you've already alluded to, there's a state agenda and their legislation about change. There's the announcement last night about the waste levy, so there's lots of things contributing to those increases.
Yeah, I thought waste is going to get pretty close to like water and gas. I mean, the truck could weigh my bin, and I live on my own, and I don't put my bin out often at all. And I think those people that are contributing to less waste, seriously, and there are whole families reducing their waste burden, should enjoy some relief from those changes. Right.
Comment. Do we have any more questions? Go ahead.
Where would the savings made to reduce the LPPF measure to the figure you've shown tonight? Where would the savings?
Thank you for that question, David. Who would like to respond?
They're not necessarily savings, David. What the measures do different things. So last year when we had quite a significant deficit in accordance with the local government reporting framework, we have to include all those one-off projects. So this year the reduction is that we haven't taken on any new one-off operating initiatives. So that means that we don't have to report those. So that's the only difference. It hasn't been necessarily that we've chipped away at how we run the business. It's just we've made some decisions not to do those one-off projects and therefore have to report the costs in that measure. So that's why we always present the two measures, because the local government performance framework is very sensitive to, for instance, when our federal assistant grants comes in. We've got to report on that when it comes in. What we like to look at is what's happening over a trend line, and that's why we report the council measure, which gives us a more accurate reflection of where we are year to year in terms of our recurring expenses. Did you want to add anything, Gehan?
In light of that, the employee expenses, for example, the IT initiatives that we're undertaking is supposed to result in productivity gains for the borough, and yet employee costs are still significantly up. And we're, in terms of actual savings, whether the organisation has sort of cut cut to the bone.
I don't think we can argue that they're significantly up. They're actually only up by 1.6%, which is less than the enterprise agreement requirement, which is 2.5%, plus the 0.5 for superannuation costs, plus another 38% increase in work cover insurance. So we've actually found quite significant savings in employee costs from last year to forecast to next year. So, and a lot of that has come through having worked the ICT transformation and the new systems into the process and getting familiar with them. We've now been able to restructure the organisation and not necessarily continue on with, for instance, a position that helped us throughout the transition process. So there's been things there. So I would think we'll keep looking at that, but it is at this point, I think it's about $192,000. We've found about $450,000 worth of savings in operational expenses year on year.
I think we've got time for one more question. Does anybody have any more questions?
Excellent, thank you. Go ahead.
What's the life of the EBA? Is it due for renegotiation?
So, we're just finishing the second year of the current EBA, so we're into, yeah.
It was a quick one. Maybe there's time for one more.
In request of the 900,000, the detail you might provide, could you just give me as much detail as you can about the 900,000? Thanks.
If you look at the page, we have a breakdown already given about that 900,000. We have given a breakdown based on asset type, how we have allocated. If you look at the page 66 and under the renewal column, you can see how we have allocated the 900,000 to different asset categories.
Whether it's painting, roof, it doesn't help me much to know whether it's buildings or, you know what I mean? What are you going to spend the 900? You know now. You must be you must have a very good idea. There's a work paper somewhere with the 900. Now, can you give me as much of that work paper as you can?
Indication of where that money will be directed.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, the EBA, is that based on the rate cap? Does the rate cap feed into the EBA?
So it doesn't have to, but the negotiated position we came to, there was a link to the rate cap in terms of the increases. So management and staff came to an agreement that we would look at a annual increase 0.5% below the rate cap for that year, with a cap below that, and then that took into account the fact that the superannuation guarantees that they were also receiving.
Right, it's the higher the EBA. Is that how it works?
Thanks, Martin. Excellent. Okay. On behalf of the Borough, I'd like to thank you for coming along, both for attending and bringing your curiosity. I'd like to remind you, as we've said a couple of times tonight, that we're still taking budget submissions through until the 26th of May, so please make the most of that opportunity. Any questions, please again use that mechanism to send those in as well. And we look forward to hearing from you. Have a good night. Thanks so much.